All right.
So I'll just make a quick statement again that we are here this evening to review and to comment on the proposed plan development by Horizon Realty, with Jeffrey Michael present here this evening to share with us the proposal for the 1621 to 1631 Chicago Avenue. And we're very fortunate to have with us city staff, our planning manager, Elizabeth Williams, and land use planner of the Planning and Zoning Division, Megan Jones, with us. And they will now walk us through a little bit what the status is currently of this proposed plan development. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So with regards to exactly where this development is in the review process, we are in between the zoning analysis staff review phase and land use commission. So as of now, we've tentatively scheduled this for the August 10th land use commission meeting. Up to this point, we have reviewed the preliminary plans that the applicant has submitted, as well as the actual plan development application. We've had some discussions back and forth regarding making sure that they've heard some of the staff's concerns. They're aware of the site development allowances that they will need to request for the land use commission meeting or prior to the land use commission meeting. And we are essentially coming back to the public this evening to make sure you guys have another look at what is proposed, because there are some updates from the original preliminary plans and the plan development. Don't know if you want me to go into the site development allowances yet or have them do their presentation. I can hold off. Up, you muted.
I think, Megan, we're going to touch on those a
Okay.
little bit.
Yeah, Megan, actually, yes, if you could just touch on the sort of the top three. I know height is an important one. If you could, we don't have to go into all the details, but maybe just the ones that are the most obvious. And
Got it. So I can go through those pretty quickly. The really quick one, they are requesting 2 loading berths instead of the 3. It's 3 because they've expanded their retail a little bit. They are requesting 57 parking spaces where I believe it's 130 are required. They are requesting a zoning height of 174 feet and 8 inches, where the base height is 105. They could request the site development allowance, which would enable them to get a little bit of height, but this development actually goes slightly above that. They are also requesting a site development allowance for the number of dwelling units. The number of dwelling units they are able to have in this particular lot is 106. They're requesting a total of 180, but I do want to clarify that this includes bonus units that they are able to receive because they are placing all of the required on-site affordable all of their affordable units on site.
well, I just want to clarify, they're able to apply for that because of this. It doesn't mean it's an automatic.
Right, no, it's not an automatic, it's not an automatic approval for it. But we do, when we're doing the calculations, we figure in the bonuses so that can be explained throughout the process.
Okay.
And
Megan,
then,
can you also just tell us, I'm sorry to interrupt. So this is can you explain the districting, like it's a D?
this is the D4. So it's the Downtown Transition District. We've got 4 downtown districts. There's, of course, D1 through D4. D3 is actually the most dense of the downtown districts. And I believe that is actually, there are some properties that are across the street that are zone D3. But this D4 is, as the title of the district actually says, is meant to act as a transition between the downtown area and the other, like, more dense residential areas that are adjacent to it.
Great, thank you. I think that that's, I think, kind of hits on most of the, unless there's something else you think that's.
Well, the last site development allowance they are requesting is a FAR, it's a floor area ratio of 7.8, where 8 is allowed. So there's the base FAR, but they can request a site development allowance. And they also, since they're doing those on-site affordable units, there's a bonus that can be factored in there, but they have to request that in order to get that approved by council.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So the way I'd like to, that's terrific. Any questions on that before we proceed? Just on that sort of overview, and we can get into more detail on these variances that are being applied for.
I have one question. The proposed height in the written version that we saw on the city site was 185. Has that been negotiated down to 174 now? Is that how that happened? Because the request as posted on the city's
I
site.
was actually going to clarify this, and Megan, you can probably do a better job, but the actual height of the
Could you
building.
say who you are, please, before speaking?
Yeah, my name's Bob Fretcher. I'm a resident downtown. But the actual height of the building, if you used a tape measure, is 195 feet. But because of credits, it gets calculated for purposes of zoning at the 175, I think, that Megan quoted. Is that correct, Megan?
That's correct. So as you mentioned, the actual height, if you were to take a tape measure and measure from the ground floor to the absolute top of the building, would be 195 feet. With zoning, we have a zoning height. So there are allowances given for the floors that are dedicated to parking, and they have about 20 feet that is primarily for parking. So that does not count in the zoning height.
There was some discussion of having the parking below street level. Has that been abandoned?
That was the previous proposal
Yes.
that had the below grade parking.
Thank you.
Bob, thank you so much for pointing that out. That's an incredibly important observation. That is the height that we will all experience. So I think it's really important that we note that 195 feet. Evanston, not all towns don't count parking levels. I mean, I would like to see that changed in our ordinance so that that is counted, because it is, otherwise it's somewhat misleading, right? If we don't actually add that when we reference the height. So thank you so much, Bob.
Can I make one more clarification, again, subject to Megan's calling me out on it?
Sure.
There's a similar dynamic with the number of proposed units, I believe, in that there are actually 180 units being proposed for this. It's a very large number of units for this site. If just based on the size of the site, this site would only actually permit 54 units.
Yes.
Yes.
However,
Okay.
again, there are, I'll call them credits. That's probably not the right legal term, but there are
For each.
credits that are applied, and that's how you arrive at 106 allowed units. But again, for those of us who live in that area, we're going to see the effect of the number of human beings that will be living in 180 units. That's what we will see.
Indeed.
Here, here. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, thank you for that also. And I really hope going forward for any development that we can always speak to actually what residents will be experiencing, because that's so important, because otherwise, again, I know, Megan, you're just sticking to the code, but it feels deceptive, right? So I know that's not you. I know absolutely that's not your intent, but I think it's really important that we do have those full numbers out there to understand that it's a difference between what would have been allowed on this particular plot, 54, versus what is being proposed, 180. And yes, right, we make allowances, but I think we need to, I think for the residents experiencing the development who live in the neighborhood, it's important to understand that, because that's the neighborhood they moved into with that zoning. So.
And there's a church there, and there's a preschool there. I mean, all those groups are going to be impacted based on the actual building size and the actual number of human beings that move into it, not based on some calculated made up number.
Could I make a comment?
So if it's related to this, otherwise we'll have
It
Mr.
is.
Michael. Okay.
It'll be quick. Thank you, Megan, for pointing out this is a downtown transition district. So I just want to elaborate that on a little bit. The description in the document from the city says it should provide the D4 downtown transition district should provide suitable transitions between downtown and neighboring areas. And this really is not at all doing that, the opposite.
Okay, thank you.
Claire,
That's
I have one fast question.
Sure.
And I don't know if you know the answer, and you're going to say it later, but how many affordable units, do they know that yet? Or they
Yeah, I
have-
think they're going to present that. I believe it's 10%.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Okay.
So I'll let Jeffrey. Okay, so if, Jeffrey, what I'd like to do then, just like the last one, just because I know often it's difficult if folks wait till the very end of presentation, they have questions that they forgot that were related to the beginning. So if we can do sort of 10-minute segments, open it up again. And I'd like to open it up in the beginning to after, if you could present, give a short sort of 10-minute presentation. And then we
Claire,
have some representatives here from groups like from the First United Methodist, I'd like, who are representing large groups as well as the condominium association. I'd like to give them, allow them to make comments first. So,
All right, you want to hear from us first?
I'm sorry.
You want to hear from us, from the condominium, from our condominium?
Yeah, I thought from the church, church in
Okay.
Hinton.
Hear me?
I thought, well, I was thinking, do you want to do, how about if we let Mr. Michael present for 10 minutes and then
That might be
the
best.
church-
Then-
I thought then we'd have First United Methodists, we have Pastor Grace and the chair of the Board of Trustees with us. So I thought both of you could then speak and then we can allow for more speakers, but I want to make sure because you're representing multiple residents.
So you want the presentation from HRG first and then, is that
That's
correct?
part of it anyway, about 10 minutes of it, and then we'll take a
Yeah.
break for
Very
comments.
well.
That sounds okay.
Claire, I haven't timed the remarks here. It's 7:16 now, so I think the committee's had 16 minutes to speak. I would like just to get through these remarks, which are probably about 10 to 15 minutes long, but I think this is important for us to be able to communicate what we're proposing. I see the committee's got a lot of good and valid questions, and I think I will answer many of them, if not all of them, if I could just go through these remarks. We know what the sensitive points are.
Again, I just don't want, it to go, if we could.
No, we want to hear from everybody anyway, so I'd love to open up.
And then
the
you can
floor.
continue, of course. I just don't want it to be a long monologue because people forget.
Claire,
Jeff, it's Tim Kent. Do you want us to put up the slideshow? Do you want me to share my screen?
I
do
think
you wanna go
it'd be
through your-
easier if you do it. Yeah, that'd be fantastic if you could do it, Tim.
Okay, if I can share my screen. This is Tim Kent.
You should
Okay,
be
and
able
Tim,
to
your
share.
role is, you are,
I'm the architect for the project.
okay.
And just so everyone's aware, I'm Jeff Michael. It's Tim. Jonathan Perman is with us with Perman Group, and Graham Grady and Silva Micah. They're our legal counsel. They're also on this call too. So Tim,
Can everybody see that?
let me know when you're ready there.
Looks good.
Okay, so again, thank you everyone for the time. I'll try to be as quick as I can, but I want to make sure I get through the points I think they're important. Tim, if you go to slide 2, just as some very brief background for those of you that aren't familiar with our company, Horizon Realty Group, it's a family-owned and operated business. We've been around since about 1984. Our main business is buying value-add apartment buildings, revitalizing them, fixing them up with our own capital, and renting them and owning them and managing them. We have about 2,400 apartments throughout Chicago, and we're the proud owners of the Marion, which is located immediately to the south of the subject property that we're discussing tonight. And it's home to a very robust senior community in
I
Evanston.
apologize, I'm sorry, Megan or Elizabeth, I think you have controls. There are people in the lot waiting to get in. If you could just I just want to make sure that that people aren't left out. I have about 3 people texted me.
Okay, I don't think I've got anyone showing up as waiting, but I'll double check.
Okay, Jeremy Venata and,
I'm in.
okay, great. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Pardon me.
It's all right, no problem. Okay, next slide, Ken, or Tim, sorry. So as I mentioned, the Marion is owned and operated by us. We bought it in 2012. If any of you are familiar with it, at the time it was really neglected. We came in, invested $40 million of our own capital and completely repositioned the Marion. Like I said, today it's a thriving senior living community. There's over 150 people living there. And I invite all you to kind of stop by and see what we've done. I think seeing is believing. And I bring up the Marion just to sort of validate and let you know that we're invested in this block, and we put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, in terms of bringing the Marion back to life. Next slide, Tim. This is just a testimonial from one of our very happy residents there, Luba Ames, kind of speaking to our personal touch that we invoke in terms of how we manage the Marion, the fact that we're pretty hands-on, and just kind of speaks to the service and happiness that she's experienced at the Marion. Next slide. Just to give you a little bit of the lay of the land, this is an aerial view of the site looking southeast. Tim, maybe if you roll your cursor over where the proposed, there you go. That yellow square signifies where the proposed legacy building would be built. And then of course, it's on the 1600 block of Chicago Avenue on the east side of the street, basically across the street from, sort of across from Whole Foods. Next slide. And an aerial view, you can see the Marion on top of the photo, and then the project site sort of diagonal bottom left. It's currently improved with a single story retail structure that is 50% vacant right now. It's reached functional obsolescence in terms of attracting new tenants because it doesn't have the clearing heights that new tenants want. The MEPs are out of date in terms of what tenants need. There's no loading dock, things of that nature. Next slide.
Can you explain NEPs?
The MEPs, the mechanical equipment, basically heating, cooling, electrical loads. So in order to bring any tenant, a newer tenant as a restaurant operator, it would require significant upheaval in terms of the MEPs, black iron, that kind of thing. Just some streetscape photos of the subject property, just in case you're not familiar with them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Hopefully you guys are, I imagine you're familiar with it. That's why you're here. Next slide. Okay, legacy. So what I want to tell you about is the opportunity here. The legacy is what we believe is a unique opportunity for Evanston to accomplish some key goals that is set for itself that include affordable housing right in the middle of downtown, economic benefits to all of Evanston, downtown vitality, and new job opportunities. And I'm going to speak to each one of these. Next slide, Tim. First, this project is going to inject social and economic vitality into downtown Evanston, a neighborhood that has been confronted with challenges due to the pandemic. The legacy is in bringing nearly 300 residents or customers to downtown who, with their visitors, will patronize the shops, restaurants, and other services, adding new sales tax revenue to the city. It's an opportunity to take an eyesore property that's only marginally contributing to the community and turn it into a crown jewel. Next slide, Tim. Second, the legacy is an opportunity to bring about economic impact of over about $10 million to the Evanston community in the first 13 years alone, with $1.6 million coming from property taxes alone. The current property yields about $89,000 in property taxes. So we anticipate that the property tax base is going to multiply by 17 times of what it's currently generating. For a city whose tax base has grown only marginally in the last decade, the legacy brings sorely needed tax revenue that's going to benefit Evanston. Our project replaces a functionally obsolete retail square footage on the block with new attractive retail spaces. We're enhancing the streetscape and also the retail potential. And lastly, the next slide, Tim. The legacy presents an opportunity to create 18 beautiful affordable housing units in a Class A building in downtown Evanston. This commitment will make a sizable impact on the affordable housing situation in Evanston. It answers those who criticize the inclusionary housing ordinance for not doing enough or for providing inferior affordable housing or for not presenting affordable housing in desirable neighborhoods. And the next slide.
May I ask a question?
if I could finish up, finally, the legacy is an opportunity to provide local construction jobs in partnership with Evanston residents that want to get a foothold in construction and real estate. We are committing to making hiring attempts from Evanston residents first and offering a scholarship program whereby we will invest in young Evanston residents that want to get into the real estate industry. Next slide, Tim. So we've been working on this project for several years. During those years, we've received meaningful feedback from several residents and other stakeholders in the community relating to the height and the look of the building. We want you to know that we've listened to you. And this next, there's a little slide, little vignette, I guess, that provides a good visual on how our project has changed for the better in terms of less height, less scale, and a bold new look. Tim, if you could play this 10-second kind of video, shows the morphing where we started with what was a 33-story building and has shrunken in terms of its size, its scale, its look, down to its current proposed 18-story building. And the next slide, Tim. So as you can see, our plans have changed to conform to the requests that the community has made and the input that we've received. And here's a little table that outlines those highlights. And we started at a building height of about 212 feet. As has been mentioned, the current tape measure height is 195 feet. But I also want to point out, because you community was emphasizing what people will actually feel. You're going to feel a building that's 185 feet because the last 10 feet are set back about 20 feet from the front of the building, and it houses predominantly mechanical equipment. So your vantage point from the street will be a 185-foot building, even though, yes, the tape measure height of that building is 195 feet. Total units, it started at 240. We're down to 180 units. It started at 0 on-site affordable units, and now it is at 18 affordable units. Per the IHO, we are required to do 13 units, and we've added 5 bonus units as a public benefit to the project. So I want to comment on the current retail tenants in the Marion and the property to the north. Unfortunately, there's been rumors that we're not renewing leases on our small independent retail tenants and restaurant users, and I want to address that. First, there's no greater champion of small independent businesses than us. If you look at the lineup of tenants that we have and we've leased to in our building over the last 8 years, in Evanston, you'd be hard pressed to find another property owner that has so many small businesses in their portfolio. And we recently added Picnic, which is a great restaurant, to our site. Even in the challenging times of COVID, we've worked with our tenants to assist them. We've provided them with special payment arrangements during COVID, and we did whatever we could to have them remain in our buildings. Other property owners in downtown Evanston have filled their retail spaces with chain restaurants. We don't have, I don't think, a single chain. We have, unless you count European Wax, we don't have a single chain in the Marion or the existing building. It's our intent to continue the legacy, to continue our record of supporting small independent businesses, as we expect to find the same quality tenants for the new building as we've done in the last 8 years. While our negotiations with tenants are understandably proprietary, I can tell you that we are working to temporarily remove the cleaners that's there, La Cocinita, and we've also, we're in constant discussions with the 3 current tenants there, and we're hopeful that we're going to be able to work out arrangements to put them either in the existing Marion building or in the new building once it is built. And then lastly, with respect to the potential criticism relating to the height, which I anticipate we will get, we ask that you consider the IHO ordinance and the stated goals of the city council when they enacted the IHO, which is to create affordable housing opportunities. As you know, the IHO is premised on the very notion of granting additional density and height as a mechanism for the city to provide affordable housing that otherwise would not be built. This is accomplished through bonus density, which we've already alluded to, provided within the IHO. This project seeks to do exactly what the IHO inspires and enables developers to do, but we cannot achieve the goals of providing meaningful affordable housing, especially in one of Evanston's most expensive neighborhoods, without incorporating this trade-off. This needs to be understood by those that are criticizing the height. Evanston wants affordable housing, and most Evanstonians believe That means throughout Evanston, including the downtown area. As I mentioned, the proposed building height is 195 feet tall. The underlying zoning district already contemplates buildings of almost this height. So those who argue that the building is too tall for the block don't recognize or aren't fully understanding the downtown plan and its zoning. To create these affordable units in the most desirable parts of Evanston, it costs money. There's simply no way to crack that nut without providing the extra density and height to overcome those sunk costs, especially in today's environment where interest rates have gone through the roof, the cost of construction is up 25% from only a year ago, and property taxes continue to significantly increase. Our company has proven itself as a genuine business citizen of Evanston, and we believe we've earned the trust to move forward with the legacy as proposed. Just look at what we did next door at the Marion. The Marion would have been closed or likely condemned by now had we not stepped in and spent the money that we did on that facility. Today's the crown jewel of senior living in the North Shore. So in closing here, you have the opportunity to work with a local family that has proven to be a trustworthy partner. It's already personally invested in the block, and we're going to be a long-term owner, and we'll see this project through its completion. Our plan is to develop, own, and operate the new legacy project. We're not a random developer that builds and flips projects, leaving the community with uncertain ownership and possibly questionable property management. We ask that you embrace this project, to think boldly, to seize this unique opportunity for Evanston that's going to make a real impact on furthering the goals of creating desirable, affordable housing opportunities and to add to the vitality of downtown Evanston.
Great.
So those remarks, Alderman Kelly, I turn it over to you.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you for that time.
Jeffrey. So if we could stop there for a moment, I just think that was about 10, 15 minutes. I have a couple of questions regarding the affordable housing. Will you accept Section 8 vouchers?
Of course.
You will accept Section 8 vouchers. And can you describe the composition of the affordable units? How many? How many? So it's 18 altogether, correct?
Yeah, it's 18. It's 13 are required to comply, and we're doing 5 bonus units. The IHO ordinance itself, I believe, mandates that the unit mix, which I think you're alluding to in terms of
Wait, I just want to correct you on that. If you gave 5%, you would be required to pay into the others. So it's not that we're getting bonus. You're opting to put more on site as opposed to paying in. So this isn't.
No, not at all.
5%. Because it would pay 5% and then you would pay the additional. So 18 units would be 10%.
Wait, hold on, time out. No. We're required to do 10%. We are doing 10%, that's 13. And then we're
Wait,
doing
did you say how many units total in the building?
18 affordable.
Right, no,
There's
how many?
180 total units in the building.
Right,
This
so
is supplemental
10% is
for-
18.
Excuse me?
There's
If I could
the way this
interject,
is calculated.
128, they're gonna put
Hey, hold
in,
on, time out. We're not gonna do this way, please. If you can mute yourself,
Okay.
Tim will explain exactly
Okay.
how the math works.
Let me just ask a few of the other questions and we can get to the math. And is there a sunset date on these? Are these permanent or?
I think the ordinance requires 25 years.
So it would be a 25-year. Would you consider permanent affordable housing? That it would be in the deed that these would be permanent units?
At this time, I don't know. I'll take it under consideration. We'll consider anything at this
Because
point.
that's what's happening to our downtown, right? We're getting some units and then they've phased out over time in our
Sure.
town. Slowly, the demographics have been changing. And what is
explain
the
it?
constitution of 1 bedrooms versus 2 bedrooms for those 18 units?
They would match the unit mix of the building. So as an example, if the building was 20% 1 beds, the unit mix of the affordable units would also be 20% 1 beds. It would follow the percentages of the market rate units accordingly.
So what is that?
So
Tim, do you have that?
I have it here. This is Tim Kent. There are in the building about 14% are studio, about 54% are 1 bedroom, and 31% are 2 bedroom. And then the affordable mix would match that.
So if you could break that down with regard to the 18 units, so 1/3 of, so are you saying that, can you tell us?
I mean, there's rounding involved in it, but it's going to closely comply to whatever that.
So about of the affordable units, about 14% of those, whatever the closest whole number is, would be 14%.
Hey, Tim.
54% are 1 bedrooms and 31% are 2 bedrooms. So it's the same ratio as the whole of the building.
Just to
Understood.
get to the numbers, Claire, I've done the math. There would be 3 studios, 10 one-bedrooms, 5 two-bedrooms.
Thank you. So, okay, perfect. Thank you.
3, 10, and 5. Thank you.
So I did want to open it up. I said I would make sure.
Wait,
that
do
the
you want
rest of
Tim
the
to
time-
clarify the math on the affordable units? I think that's important.
So our ordinance stipulates 5% on site and you pay in the other 5%. And in this case, 10% on site would be 18 units on site
No,
in lieu
No.
of 5%.
No,
Doesn't work.
that's not actually not how it's calculated.
10% of 180 units.
Because of the way it's calculated, which is following the IHO ordinance. So in this case, we have 128 base units in the building. So 10% of that is 13.
I thought you had a,
That's
I'm
the,
sorry.
just let
I
me
thought
finish.
180
please.
units.
Let me finish, please, Claire. And so we have 13 base units and 128 base units and 13 base affordable units. For every affordable unit provided, you get a bonus of 4 additional units. So 4 times 13 is 52. So there are 52 bonus units in the project. So 52 plus 128 is 180. That's how this calculation is done.
Okay. In the past, we've calculated, I know because I've been involved on the total number of units, the 5 or 10% was a percentage of the total number of units. So anyway, this feels a little shell game-ish to me, but I want to open it
Claire,
up.
We're simply
Claire,
following the,
Claire,
we're simply following.
I'm
the
gonna jump in
IHO.
here. Hi, everybody. Johanna Neiden, City of Evanston, for at least another 3 weeks. I am going to ask Megan Jones, who is the staff member who calculated this under the supervision of the other city staff in consistent manner to the other developments. So Megan, why don't you walk through how this gets calculated?
Okay, so Tim actually was correct with the way it's calculated. When we do the IHO calculations, you've got that base number of units. So in this case, it is that 128. You do 10% of that 128, which rounds up to 13 units that they would be required to have on site. That is the 10% that is calculated. Now, since they're doing that 10% of units on site, they are provided a bonus or credit of 4 units per affordable unit that they have on site. So again, the 13 times 4, that's 52. You have those 52 bonus units that are added to the base of 128, which ends up being 180 units total that are on the site. Now, since they are providing 5 additional units as a public benefit, that does end up being still 10% total, since they're offering that as their public benefit. But the calculation, that is how the calculation is done.
Then the total number of units is 198,
10%.
not
So it
180.
is 10%. I just want to clarify, it is 10% of the units on site. I think we have a representative from First United, 2 representatives from First United Methodist, and I want to make sure I give the residents here time to speak. We have both the senior pastor from First United Methodist, I believe, Pastor Grace, with us.
Yes, can you get rid of the share screen?
Megan or Elizabeth, can you please? Remove the share?
I can do that.
Thank you.
Shall I go? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. Grace E. Matthew, Reverend Grace E. Matthew, Senior Pastor of First Church, Evanston, founded in 1854 by the same group of Methodists who also founded the town of Evanston, the Northwestern University, and Garrett Biblical Institute. We are next door neighbors to the Marion. The shadow of the Marion falls on us. I know that because I watched it the other day. We also share the same garbage alley. We have 6 members who live in the Marion. I just will make this really short because we've been at this long while, BC, before COVID, during COVID, and now, and nothing has changed. It's the same, this exact same information. And so I don't want to repeat what I said the first time and second time and the third time. I'll simply ask, why a third attempt on an essentially unchanged plan? The building is still 18 stories tall. Multiple city review committees have twice rejected the plan. How many more reviews? The community of neighbors, including First Church, with its 720 members, have expressed strong objections to the project as currently designed. Which other voice are you looking for to hear us? Surely 3 strikes and you're out. Or is this the game I heard when I was growing up elsewhere called Uncle, where you just simply wear out the other person? Thank you, Councilmember Kelly, for supporting the objection to this project. And now I ask my chair of the Board of Trustees, Bill Brown, to take the next part.
Well, thank you, Pastor Grace, and thank you for your comments this evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Brown. I'm the chair of trustees at First United Methodist Church and have been involved with this project for a number of years now. And I think all of us are asking the question, how is it that we return to it a third time? And I think it's important to note that the height of the building at 18 is what we understood and what we have expressed concern about, as Grace has said. There's an expression, I think, that states an essential flaw of thinking. Why would you do something over and over and expect a different result? This is an unpopular project. It should not receive anything but the same treatment that it has previously. I think it's a project that we have to do, follow the adage of watch what is done, not what is said. And the building is 18 stories tall. That has not changed. I think that we have talked before that a lower building could be built here, but that there is a return on investment that's desired. And the comments about affordable housing delve into a level of detail that is important. But another way to look at it is that the affordable housing allows for the building to be even bigger on account of bonus units that come with that approval. Also with the affordable housing comes the opportunity for a vote at City Council to not have to be a supermajority for a planned development, but can be a simple majority. I'm sure that that was of interest as well. So it seems to me that that we must remain diligent. We have to stay the course. Yes, 3 strikes and you're out. And I think that that's what most of the people here tonight are looking for. And so, like Pastor Grace, not to go back over all of the issues that we have all spoken of, but to rather encourage everyone to continue to provide their input, to object, and see if we can't get this project in some form that's acceptable to all of us, because we do realize that a building can be built here, a development can be had. I always think when I drive by the new building at Grove and Ridge, very attractive 8-story building, not comparable necessarily, but that could be allowed here. That would be a reuse of the property. That's not what's proposed. It's a building over twice that tall.
Bill, what height would you accept?
8 stories.
8 stories. Okay.
8 stories.
So anything over 8 is objectionable to you. Okay.
8 would be the most acceptable. That's right, Jeff. Yeah. And so I think I'll let others comment. I'll cede my time back to Chairperson Kelly.
Note that in
Thank
the,
you, Mr. Brown. And Megan, could you tell us for this zone, this D4, what is about the stories that would be allowed just within right? I know you gave us the foot, the height. What would that calculate?
So are
roughly?
you speaking to what the downtown plan?
I'm referring to a
D4
D4
or-
district, to this D4 district, not with bonuses and parking and all that, just straight, like within right, you build a building. What is like about how many stories would that be? About 8?
So by
So,
right, it's 105 feet. Being a planned development, they could request a site development allowance for an additional 40 feet, which gets them to about 145 feet, but that probably would not be taller than,
Well, what is the,
Like
what
over
do you say?
13.
So it's 100, so just straight with.
What's
the
105 feet? How many stories is
Right.
105 feet?
Right, that's my question.
That's
I
the
wanna know
question.
About how many stories?
That's-
105.
Claire, an average floor height is 9 to 10 feet. So with developer allowances, you can do 14 stories. Without developer allowances, you do about 10 stories.
the
So
report,
Megan, 105 feet for you, that,
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, Paul.
Yes. I have in front of me the analysis signed by Megan Jones, which says that a building of 8 to 10 stories would be appropriate. So 10 is the highest recommended in that report,
And 8 is
and
desirable.
8 is desirable.
thank you. And I just think it's important for residents to hear that and understand that, what the neighborhood that they moved into with the zoning as it is. So I just wanted that clarified. Thank you.
We did a boat of research on this. I think it's time for us to report unless you have.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's also important to note that the D4 zoning allows for 105 with potential for a developer allowance. It takes it to 145. That's the full story.
That's an application that can be approved or denied. We're talking about
Correct.
within right where we don't have.
As
the
of right, 105.
Right, so I just want to be
Yeah.
clear on that. That's what we're talking about. Like you come into, that's what you, so I think we have 2 groups. You've done considerable research, Paul, if you
Yeah.
want to speak, and then I'd like representatives of I think it is the Sherman.
Try to be concise.
Okay,
This is actually the 4th iteration of this proposal, not the 3rd.
How do we increase our,
Can we correct the record on that? This is the second application. I don't know where the 3rd and the 4th. The
All
first
right.
one was
I
for
will-
senior
I will
living.
explain.
Senior living, I was the one involved, okay, and I'm the one submitting
Excuse
the
me, I
application
was before.
fee. So there's been 2, no, because I want to state facts. I don't want a misinformation spread. This is the second round at this. We went to
No,
the
I have
council once.
this.
And it was a senior
Okay.
living community, and it was 211 feet. It was a drastically different building. And those are the facts.
No, here are the facts.
No.
In May
No.
2018, the proposal was reviewed. It requested 156 units, a height of 145, an FAR of 7.9, and 85 parking spaces. It was resubmitted in December of 2018 with a request for 240 units, 212 feet of height, 11.6 FAR, and 85 spaces. Both of these proposals had 1 loading dock, whereas 2 are required by the base zoning. Then came in the April 2020 proposal, which asked for 215 units, 185 feet, 10.4 FAR, 85 spaces, and went up to 2 loading docks.
So this would be the 3rd.
thank you. Thank you very much for that, Paul. And who's representing the Sherman, the Chicago Hinman Association? Paul, is that you?
Can I ask a quick question while we're waiting? Mr. Michael, did Horizon Realty Group file for bankruptcy in 2020?
It's completely irrelevant. I'm not even answering.
No, it's relevant.
Okay. Thank you.
You want to answer the question?
I'm not answering any of your questions. I mean, whatever you obviously have information over there. You can read whatever you want to read.
Okay, so you did file for bankruptcy. So I'm just wondering how you're financing this project.
We're privately financing this project. We have the private funds to finance this project, like we have for the other 28 properties that we own and manage in Chicago.
You have a private funds to finance this project, but you declared bankruptcy in 2020.
Is it
Whoa.
a question there? I'm not.
No, I wanted on record.
Okay, that's fantastic. Great job.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I think I froze, but is the representative here from?
I was trying to get through my presentation, but that was.
All right,
one
go ahead, Bob, continue. I'm
relevant
sorry, I thought you had
point. We
paused.
did not Cover that, yeah.
Ask her how to do this.
How do I get the big square?
Okay, you want to, okay, can you,
Here.
you should be able to share, Megan or Elizabeth, if you could allow Bob to share his screen.
Okay, so I'm now going to quote, I'm just going to, 185 feet is 1.76 times the base zoning limit of 105, and 195 feet is more than that. The FAR of 10.4 would be, you've knocked it down because of the allowances, but it's grossly over the base zoning. So the question arises,
Oh, 5.
yeah, and 5.4 is the base zoning, 105 feet of height. 180 units is over 3 times the base zoning limit of 54. This isn't allowances, this is complete ignoring of the ordinance. So I would suggest that if the city wants to do this, it should rewrite the ordinance so it means something. But to grossly violate the ordinance is unacceptable. And I'm going to quote from some letters that were submitted in 2020. A resident of 522 Church, which is right by where this would be, said that granting this proposal would, quote, allow development of this site virtually without reference to the parameters of the existing underlying zoning district. A resident of the existing high-rise at 1630 Chicago Avenue said that the proposed building is out of character with the D4 district, which is intended to provide a step-down transition from the taller building on the other west side of Chicago, where this person lives, to the smaller apartment buildings and single-family homes within the D4 area. And then we quote the 8 to 10 story recommendation in the April 6, 22 analysis. And another resident of 522 Church Street said, once again, the developers have submitted essentially the same proposal that was submitted in 2018 and again this past spring. And all of the public letters, which we have examined, remark on the developer's refusal to respond to previous criticism of scale by bringing the project down to a more appropriate size. Instead, it's been different shell games, to take Claire's phrase, to try to manipulate the allowances so as to achieve the original height and bulk, which we find cynical, frankly.
Yeah, and which as soon as they applied for affordable housing, the building got high.
Yeah. Then there's the matter of trying to provide only 57 parking spaces on the reasoning that renters will use public transportation. Well, that would mean 68% of the residents would have to have no cars. This is really unrealistic, especially if COVID continues, because most of us who can avoid public transportation try to do so. There's no guarantee that that will change anytime soon. So you're turning a bunch of cars loose on the community at large to find parking spaces, which takes them away from current residents. HRG has suggested leasing 38 spaces in the Church Street garage. That would bring the total to 95. That's still well short of the 119 specified by the ordinance. And it really is just it's offloading the parking shortage, because those 38 spaces would disappear for anybody else who wanted to rent them. So then there's the question of the federally funded bike path that runs along the east side of Chicago Avenue. And building this bringing a whole bunch of people into this building will disrupt that. There are already traffic problems at that corner, which would become markedly worse. And one resident wrote that congestion has caused safety vehicles on their way to an emergency to be unable to move. And that's with the traffic already as it is. So you do this, and you've really got a problem. The height, we did our own light, and we did our own light analysis by walking out. We saw that the apparent height of 1630 is almost as high as the tower of the First United Methodist Church from the vantage point of Hinman. This building would be much closer to us than that building, which is on the west side of Chicago Avenue. This would be on the east side of Chicago Avenue, and the back of it would front on the alley behind the First United Methodist Church. It would obliterate afternoon sun for residents on Hinman and possibly, and for the playground of the church, which has a daycare program and uses that playground. So that is not good for the rest of us if that
it's
happens.
hardly an amenity, which is one of the
I mean, yeah,
requirements of planned unit housing.
Yes. So,
Darkness is our amenity.
yeah, right. So our conclusion is this. The new proposal is an insufficiently modified version of the old one, which was an insufficiently modified version of the one before. It was a bad idea twice in 2018, a bad idea in 2020, and it remains a bad idea in 2022. At the end of its report of April 6, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Division bluntly summarizes its findings. This application is non-compliant. Unless HRG makes a serious effort to reduce the scale of the project, which none of these four proposals has done, it will remain uncompliant and unwelcome. We strongly urge you to reject it. We also ask that the city stop rewarding HRG's initiatives by wasting the city's time and money on further reviews of this scheme, which keeps coming back like the proverbial bad penny. End of letter. And it's been signed on to by 11 of the 18 owners of property in our 18 unit.
After 24 hours.
Yeah, and it has only been in circulation for 24 hours. We expect more signatures. I rest my case.
Paul, thank you so much for that, incredible research and compiling of the history. That's fabulous community collaboration. So thank you. A few hands are raised also. Let's see, Jeremy Venata.
Thanks. So this is the third call I've been on. I don't know why you are yelling at us about the facts. It looks like the residents came pretty well prepared with some facts. I think, you opened your presentation with the fact that 50% of the existing tenants are vacant, and that's because you denied their leases.
Say that.
No, the delete.
Oh.
I
see.
So, in addition to all the things that Paul said, we've been here. I don't appreciate the tone that you take with our residents, the tone you take with our elected officials. This is the second time I've addressed it with you, and things don't change. I think if you are willing to address us like this when you're asking for variances, you're asking for approval, it's not a good situation for any tenants in your building, and it's probably not a good situation for any of the businesses that want to be in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Let's see, and Arthur Altman?
Oh, hi. I live in the residence Sherman Plaza. Two little points. In the Marion, you can pull in, there's an indentation, so you're not blocking the street. There's no, you showed people eating on tables outside. Well, if you have them eating outside, there's nowhere for them, trucks and cars to pull in, sort of make a delivery. So I'm wondering about that. And lastly, I could suggest two other uses for your property. One, it sounds silly, but a bowling alley. Number two, I've been to restaurants, not here in Evanston, where there's a peripheral spaces, one's Italian, one's Japanese, what have you, around the central eating area. And with those three stores out, you could maybe build a special kind of restaurant like that that would be unique for Evanston. And the other thing is, I like deli, and there's no really deli store or really good deli restaurant. So that would be another thought. So I realize all your time and effort, but maybe instead of a building like that, like the two I suggested, but I'm only a resident of Evanston, but something unique. Anyway, that's a thought. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you for thinking outside the box and offering some creative ideas. I know a lot of my high school students would love that. Every year they wrote on the board this year what they wanted for Evanston bowling alley. That came up over and over again. So thank you. Jonah Karsh.
Yeah, hi, Councilmember Kelly. Thanks so much. I'm Jonah Karsh from the 3rd Ward. I came because I care about affordable housing in Evanston, and was hoping to find out about this project and figure out how I could come to support it. And I'm actually really offended by the way that Mr. Michael talked to our residents tonight, and the documented issues that were raised about his business practices, I think, mean that he's the wrong fit for this project. What I will say is, and to push back on some things I've heard, I really think we need more affordable housing in Evanston. The affordable housing bonus units that people were raising issue with, they're actually in the inclusionary housing ordinance because people who know about how to build affordable housing put them in. And they said that in order to incentivize developers to build affordable housing, you need to provide them with those units. Unless nonprofits are going to build every affordable housing unit in our entire community, my thought was that we're not going to have enough affordable housing. And another thing is that I find sometimes that the people who are going to benefit from affordable housing can't show up to a community meeting like this because they don't know that the unit that's going to be built for them, that's going to provide them a place to live and meet our equity goals and our climate goals as a city, they can't show up to speak for themselves because they aren't tenants yet, but the people who are opposed can. So I think we just need to consider, I think this is the wrong project, but I think we need to think about how we can get affordable housing in all neighborhoods in Evanston. And that sometimes means making sacrifices around parking, around sunlight, around height, things like that in order to get density and affordable housing. And in fact, I was watching the council meeting last night and I heard something really interesting, which is that there's a big apartment building at Maple and Davis that was renting parking spots from the city in order to satisfy parking requirements. And 90% of their residents didn't have cars and were using public transit. So transit-oriented housing is a thing. There are people that are looking to move to downtown Evanston and not have cars. So let's not write it off. I think this is the wrong project, but I'm really hoping that we can figure out how to get to yes on affordable housing in downtown Evanston. And I think if we care about equity, we have to.
Joan, I thank you for those comments. You sound, if I could address, you sound really intelligent and you've done your homework on that. I would welcome the opportunity to sit down with you and explain or talk to you about the inherent conflict in the affordable housing ordinance, how it's conflicting with what we could do. Whether you support this project or not, I just want to understand there's an inherent conflict here. The city provides the bonus density, and unfortunately, in order to be able to build the affordable housing, especially in the expensive areas of Evanston, the building has to get taller, unfortunately. Otherwise, you will never have affordable housing, at least in the D4 zoning district. That's why they allow for the 4 extra units and so on and so forth, and the bonus FAR. But when a lot is 22,000 square feet, the only place you can go is up to provide those affordable units. That's the inherent conflict in the affordable housing ordinance and the regular building.
That's why
If I could, I would just like to make a few comments. One, that affordability has been decreasing in Evanston as high rises have been going up. And there are plenty of studies that show that just by creating higher buildings, more dense buildings with a smattering of a few affordable housing, that is not in fact helping affordability in Evanston overall. And I'd love to talk to you, Joan, about that. We have to be careful. So we have to consider unintended consequences when we add 100 extra luxury units at high rates. We haven't even talked about the cost of renting these units. We want people to be able to continue to live in Evanston and not have to seek out one of the subsidized units because Evanston has become so unaffordable because of many of these luxury high rises. So that's one thing we have to keep in mind. I think that's really essential. I think a lot of times we lose sight of that. Another thing that we have to keep in mind, Evanston has a very much a bare bones inclusionary housing ordinance. I will be moving forward to strengthen our inclusionary housing ordinance. What we currently require is minimum. We're like at the bottom. When you look at municipalities that have inclusionary housing ordinances, what we require is really minimal. Chicago just recently updated theirs, and in many cases, 20% on-site is required. So I think there's a lot of discussion to be had. I absolutely want to see more affordable housing, but we have to consider unintended consequences when we continue to build these high rises that are predominantly a market rate or affordable units. So,
But Claire, so what do you propose on a lot like this? How do you get affordable housing units on a lot?
I'm saying that
such as this?
the increased density of luxury units is tilting it in favor of higher price rental. It's driving people out, and I don't want to. So that's what we've seen over the years. The studies pan out. This is happening across the nation, and I am happy, Jeffrey, to share articles with you to show you how this.
Well,
is
we requested those articles. We did
negative
request those articles from you several times. We never received them, in all due respect.
No, I'll send them to you I'll send them to you right now. I'll put them in the chat box if I can access those. Nicole, I don't want to take. I'm sorry, Bob has had his hand raised, but these are readily available, Jeffrey. These are.
And we've asked you for them.
I know. I understand that you've asked me for them. I'll make sure you get them, or you can do a quick search, but I'll send them to you. This is happening across the nation where cities are putting in, high rise. It's making it, the rents have gone up in Evanston. That's indisputable. Bob?
Thanks. I want to start by just saying that I am pro-development. I am awfully opposed to this obnoxious development in particular. It has no place on that block of Chicago Avenue. Not only is it in gross violation of the zoning, and don't get fooled by these credits, it's a 185-foot tall building with 300 residents, as was described, in a space that really is designed, as was pointed out, for 54 units. In addition to all the zoning violations, the Evanston plan stipulates that that specific block on that specific side of Chicago Avenue should have buildings no more than 6 to 10 stories tall, to be consistent with the other buildings on that block, one of which is 8 stories tall and is owned by Mr. Michael's company. The reason for that is because the buildings on the back side are residential. They aren't like the rest of the D3 district. They're residential units on the back side there. So this is a non-compliant based on the zoning alone. It's incredibly tall. It violates the Evanston downtown plan, which specifically limits that building size. It also creates really dangerous conditions. That is a tight site. It's already a congested block, both sides. You're talking about 300 units. You're talking about all the associated traffic, pedestrian traffic, street traffic. Think about Ubers, Lyfts, taxis, FedEx, UPS, Amazon, on and on and on as people come and go and have packages delivered and picked up. It's really going to be a problem and a safety problem. And right there on the corner of that alley where it connects to the church is a preschool. It's going to be dangerous for the parents and the children who are being dropped off there because that alley provides the access to the parking garage for the building and the 2 loading docks, which were described earlier, which will be the source for truck traffic into those loading docks, not only for the residents, but for the retail space on the first floor. On no basis does this building enhance Evanston's downtown district.
By the way,
And
where do you live? Are you in downtown Evanston also?
I am,
Okay. Are you in the Optima Towers?
I am.
Okay. So for the record, the Optima Towers, the zoning there, the base zoning is 85 feet. That building's 162 feet. So you live in
I'd
a
be happy.
building that's in gross violation, or of the zoning too. There's allowances and
I didn't-
variances for all projects.
I didn't put the building up, and were it my choice, I wouldn't have it up, and I wouldn't have Sherman Plaza, I wouldn't have the park, and I wouldn't have your building either. One of the things that's great about I'm glad you engaged on this. One of the wonderful things about great cities like Paris is they have height restrictions on their buildings so that people get light down at the street level. It's not the bottom of a canyon. I would love to see, as part of the new comprehensive plan for Evanston, height caps on all buildings so we don't have this canyon effect. If you were to walk down Chicago Avenue, you would realize today it's a wind tunnel. It's absolutely nuts. That's even before this particular building goes up. So the bottom line is, I'd be happy not to have any of these buildings, and I wasn't here when that building was put up. So I'm all for it. Go for it. Let's put a cap on the buildings. Sign me up. The bottom line is that if you look at the city of Evanston's vision statement, it says creating the most livable city in America. This building doesn't help.
Thank you, Bob. Cecile McHugh?
Hi, some of my thoughts are seconding some things said beforehand. My concern is that these mega developments with luxury apartments, while providing affordable units for a select few, are driving up rents for all others who need affordable housing. You can see from HUD data for fair market rents that monthly rent for a studio apartment in 60201 zip code has risen $100 each of the last 3 years. It is now at $1,520 for a studio, up from about $1,400 for a studio the year preceding and $1,300 the year preceding that. With the luxury developments, the obvious driving force, given that the developer is given +4 bonus units downtown by the inclusionary housing ordinance for each affordable unit they create, that means, of course, that 5 units can be built to provide one of the 5 as an affordable unit. This is clearly an unsustainable approach to providing affordable housing. And the affordable units are required to remain affordable for only perhaps 25 or 30 years. And so after that time, we're back to square one regarding affordable housing. The city of Evanston should instead invest in affordable housing in small buildings where most families and many or perhaps even most individuals prefer to live. If we concentrate our affordable housing in the downtown, rather than spreading it into neighborhoods, we certainly won't have enough affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecile. And Nicole Jardine?
Hi, I'm a resident of Sherman Plaza, which I think is in the first ward. Sorry for not knowing that. And I am someone who, I don't own the place where I live. I have never been able to afford to purchase a place. And housing prices for renters have gone up. Like they've gone up 11% just in the last year for Evanston, something like 23% in Chicago. We have to provide a place for people to live. So I just urge people to be open to developments that might be a little larger than they might want for, I have this gorgeous view of the lake, I get it, but Evanston's a great place to live and people want to live here. Let's give them a place to live. Also wanted to make a side comment. I happen to work for the Cook County Assessor's Office. And what is in the presentation about development actually helping with property taxes is true. When we have more people join our community in a large development like this, they can actually offload some of that property tax burden from those of us over here in Sherman Plaza or the rest of you. Happy to kind of talk more about that. But I wanted to just say how there are lots of ways that can benefit our community. beyond what we might kind of think about having more neighbors.
Thank you. Let's see, anybody, oh, so we had several people submitted letters and asked me if they could if someone could read their statements, because I couldn't be here this evening. One of those people is Dennis, let's see, Dennis Harder, and Mary, you were gonna help me with that. There were statements that folks asked to have read. Could you read that on behalf of Dennis Harder, unless he's here and wants to read it?
Okay, good.
Dennis, I saw that your name was in there. Did you want to speak to the issue? I wonder if he's having trouble.
No. Why don't you go ahead? Oh,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Mary. Thank you.
So Dennis wrote a fairly long letter saying the Horizon Realty's latest proposal is an unrepentant restatement of the past proposals for increased height dwelling unit allowances for this 21,600 square foot site, all of which has been set aside for various reasons, including the rejection by the City Council. This version, however, is garnished with the proposed public benefit in the form of extra affordable housing units as a rationale for granting extraordinary relief from zoning standards. This proposal pits the city's desire to stimulate developers to produce affordable housing units against its desire for an orderly, coherent, and well-planned urban community. For many decades, the citizens of Evanston and its elected officials have set up and then made decisions based on widely discussed planning frameworks and the zoning ordinance that delivered the form of the city, sorry, I'm having trouble reading this one, that we enjoy today. Several years ago, the city established the Inclusionary Housing Ordinance, IHO, requirements for providing affordable housing units in major developmental projects by offering incentives for developments and providing more than the required units. The Horizon Realty Group has used the Affordable Housing Ordinance incentives to overrun the zoning ordinance space limit by for the site, 52 unit dwelling units in an FAR of 5.4 with a height of 145, proposing instead 180 units, an FAR of 7.8 and a height of 180, while increasing the FAR from the 5.4 to 7.8 appears to be straightforward and consistent with both the zoning and the IHO. The rationale for extraordinary height and unit count approvals are not. The proposal is complex in its incentive calculations for the IHO bonuses, straightforward its intent to place the structure at 1621 to 31 Chicago Avenue that is significantly out of scale with the zoning allowances and boldly lacking in making height and bulk adjustments, problems raised with its previous proposals. Before this proposal moves forward much further through City Council process, I suggest that the City Development Department closely examine the manner in which the IHL bonus provides were used and to assemble a development proposal that blows through the established zoning framework. Approval of this proposal would provide affordable unit housing ordinance related benefits, which benefits, however, would only last for a limited amount of years, well short of the useful life of the building. However, such approval would result in the structure with a physical presence in a community that is extraordinary, out of sync with the city zoning ordinance and the underlying planning framework for the community. The cost overrunning the zoning planning framework by using the inclusionary housing ordinance bonus structure is too great to go downtown to the downtown Evanston community. The developer has no right to request variances and and the proposal should be rejected. And that was from Dennis. Claire just asked to read if people weren't speaking their letters.
Thank you, Mary. And there was a handful of people who asked me if I could read their statements. And Mary, do you have?
I have something from the Clarks here and the Feldmans. Are any of these folks here in the audience and would like to speak to their Ann Gunther? How about the Travines? Travertines?
I know I've received, do you want to read one?
He's the president of our condo board.
Okay, because so your condo board wrote a very long letter opposing this development. Would you like to speak to that?
I think that was
So-
covered previously.
Yeah, they spoke. So Mary, just the ones who haven't spoken or who aren't here, if you could.
And
since they
okay,
asked.
Linda's in the same building, Linda Clark and Wade Clark. I urge you to vote against the latest proposal of the 1621 Chicago Avenue. Ask your colleagues in the council to do the same. The proposal contains all the flaws that the earlier proposals had. The height, density, layout for the proposed structure are simply incompatible with the site. And as current owner, also the current lower zoning height along Chicago Avenue that is meant to afford a gradual transition to the residential neighbor to the east is completely ignored. The large number of proposed apartments, many of which are rather small, appear to be planned for student housing. However, the site is better suited for condominium or business offices with fewer suites. One of the most absurd aspects of the proposal involves the planned use of the narrow alley running behind the structure between Church and Davis. The narrow alley is already full of dumpsters and trucks serving restaurants on Chicago Avenue and is not passable during the daytime. I also understand that the city owns significant aging sewer lines on the alley. It is unclear how these will be addressed. I suggest that the city study the aspect. The additional units, the proposal adds 10 years of additional low-income housing units as incentive to gain approval of the council. The fact is not sufficient to overcome the many problems referenced above. That's from Wade Clark. Do you want to talk about that or no? Okay, we'll go to Ellen and Matt
Let
Feldman.
me just go up from one moment, Mary, since we do have, a couple of people are texting me saying their hands are raised, but their hands are raised, but I don't see them. Kira Kelly.
Okay, that would be good.
And then we'll jump back to the written comments.
I can read you the names of the folks who have their hands raised, Alderman,
Thank
Councilman.
you. I just said, I got a text from Kira Kelly saying that her
Yeah.
hand raised, but I don't
So,
see her hand raised. Do you see her?
Candy Heafy, Martha Rudy, and Cecile McHugh all have their hands raised.
Okay, so Cecile, your hand, is that intended to be raised still?
Okay, so now it's Martha Rudy and Candy Heafy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Martha?
Gotta learn how to use this.
Hi, thank you.
Sure.
I am Martha Rudy, and I serve on the Board of Trustees at First United Methodist Church, where I have attended my whole life, born and raised in the First Ward, and lived there for long time. So I want to just make a couple of points. I did put this in the chat, but just to make sure people don't fall for this. I know for a fact that at least one lease in that property on Chicago Avenue was not renewed against the choice of the tenant. It's very easy for a developer to say, oh, the property is vacant and it's an eyesore when they themselves are not renewing the lease.
Time out. Which lease is that you're referring to? I don't want any misinformation just being thrown out.
You know what? I can talk to you offline.
No, because you were saying in front of the community here, you're saying stuff that's simply not true.
Well, then the person lied to my face, but I'm going to finish my statement. I'll finish my statement. I heard this directly from a person, so I will finish my statement. And if they are not telling the truth, that's between you and them.
Why aren't you sharing the name of the tenant?
Well, may I just?
I guess you could email it to me afterwards. I appreciate you telling me.
They chose not to bring that, not to be here tonight. Okay, they're dealing with that in another way, but I'm going to say it. And whether or not it's true, it's a way, it is true, but it's a way of a distraction in telling people, oh, the property is an eyesore when it's not maintained to be fully rented. So I'll continue, sir, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So just to be aware of that, that's rhetoric that is thrown out that we have to be aware of. Spin to make it seem like they're doing such a great thing for the community when their actions are actually causing the issue in the first place. Secondly, I can second and third and fourth and fifth, the comments about the alley. In a previous meeting, I spoke about turn radius for trucks in that alley. And at the time, I was out with a tape measure. A truck would not turn into the loading dock as it was previously designed. I have not seen the current floor plans, but if that has not changed significantly, there is no room for the trucks in that alley. Third, I'd like to address the idea of the meaning of affordable housing. So my understanding about affordable housing is that it's based on a percentage of a median income. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's
okay.
correct.
So what happens when a median income, as we are seeing in downtown Evanston, goes up and up and up and up? By having all these large luxury developments, the median income increases substantially, so that affordable housing is no longer affordable unless you're making 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 or more. So that when we think of affordable housing, I want to be clear that, or help people be clear as to what it means. It doesn't necessarily mean a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,200 in downtown Evanston.
Excuse me, that's exactly what it does mean. There's a legal definition for affordable housing that we must comply with. So I don't understand, I appreciate that you guys want to give your input on this, but if you could speak to facts, you're just spreading bad information. We have to comply. We have to comply. Hold on, time out. I let you talk. We have to comply with the ordinance. The ordinance mandates what is affordable housing and what are the rental rates and to whom you can rent those units. So we're saying we're going to provide 18 legally affordable housing units. Go on.
I think this is unfair that you're interrupting the person while they're speaking.
Yeah.
Well, there's just blatantly.
No, you should not
information.
interrupt someone while they're speaking.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Actually, I agree with you, because Jeffrey, there have been things that I've questioned that you said also, and I let you finish. So please let the rest.
I'm saying that it's not necessarily, I said that, not necessarily. You said you were going to accept Section 8, fabulous. But I just want to help people understand what that means, and that's based on median income. So that when a community's median income goes up, so does the definition, the base for affordable housing. My very last point, and then I'll shut up, is that 40 years ago, and I go back that far. The building that houses rental and parking garage on the northeast corner of Chicago Avenue. When that was built, the developer originally wanted it to exceed the height limitations of the zoning there. And that was part of the development. Oh, we can't build it without it being this height. The neighbors pushed back hard. The alderman worked to keep it within the height requirement. And somehow, amazingly, they built it and assume made money. Because here it is 40 years later. It can be done. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Martha. Kira, there you are.
Can you hear me on this computer? Or not? Okay, because otherwise I can try to do it through the phone. I'm going to try to do it through, I'm also on my cell phone. I'm sorry about this.
Okay, Kira, are you there? Kira?
Yes, I am. I was trying to, I think my volume is super low. Can you hear me okay? I was trying to.
Now we can.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to reiterate with comments that this development has been denied by DAPR and the Plan Commission twice, and from my memory by City Council twice. It was panned by the community, by the nearby churches. We've heard so many very important comments from the members there. And the developer keeps coming back, and even with a taller proposal. it's my recollection that the version before this was slightly, shorter. So it just, to me, shows that I just feel like the developer's kind of thumbing his nose at our community in a way, the neighbors and the residents. And, I just wish that, we were all here to really listen and to be a neighbor and come back with something, different. Also, just some perspective, the city has allowed one endless, luxury high rise after another to take over many blocks in downtown Evanston. And the most recent one, the Albion, has replaced an entire stretch of independently owned businesses, as this would do, with nearly block-long buildings. And the promise was always that the new people that would be brought in would help the downtown businesses and help downtown. But instead, these developments have really had the opposite effect. It's really driven out local businesses and really kind of turned off Evanstonians and visitors from coming, frankly, to downtown. It's just not the high rises, wind tunnels, empty storefronts. It's just not that appealing. And we can't just blame internet shopping when you look at Wilmette and their bustling restaurant scene. In fact, I feel like they stole our restaurant scene. Blocks and blocks of al fresco dining. It's a charming setting. And I think we should not make the mistake of closing down one of downtown's most well-loved restaurants, Found. That's really a destination for people to come downtown. And again, that little stretch in front is sort of like one of the few vibrant places. And I'm sorry, but these restaurants just do not work in the high rises. They never do. I can't think of one example that worked, sadly. So I also want to point out a good article from who I believe was the former president of Open Communities, an affordable housing organization. She wrote about this development. The heading was headline, "Developers use affordable units as Trojan horse for luxury projects." And she really brings up in the article, if people have a chance to look at that, it'll only exacerbate Evanston's mismatch between housing need and existing supply. And it's really just, like we've been saying, the housing, the luxury housing coming in, really there's studies, and she cites them in her letter here, that luxury housing promotes displacement. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing longtime Evanstonians be priced out of Evanston. So there's lots of data on this front. Also, streets are so busy. The bike lane downtown Evanston, I have 4 kids and my youngest twins, we've been biking a lot lately. And it's really almost so busy and treacherous downtown that with trucks stopping in the bike lane, with so many, just so much going on, I can't imagine another high rise there, and all of the trucks that would be in front, and just the vibe it would give of like, kind of feeling like you're riding downtown Chicago or something. It's just not, it's not helping our downtown. It's not making it feel more appealing, and it frankly could be dangerous. I already almost feel like it is. Final thing is, I think this is going to be simply another building of Northwestern students. We don't really need another luxury building of all Northwestern students. No matter what the developers say, it's always just the students who end up in here in these buildings. And likely, often I believe it's independent Northwestern students, financially independent students, who end up in these affordable housing units. These aren't the kind of units we need. They're not very family friendly. And we again don't need redundant luxury housing. We have enough. It's overkill. And I just ask our city to kind of be more creative and look at a plan to really make our city more healthy and vibrant. And I don't think this development as it stands is part of that future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. Candy? Fifi?
Thank you. My computer ran out of battery. We've been going so long. I wanted to say a couple of things. When Mr. Michael the first presentation I ever came to, I had the impression that this was going to be sort of part and parcel, very harmonious with the earlier versions of the Marion. I live exactly behind the newer one on Hinman. And it was completed just before I moved here, either 4 or 5 years ago. And so I've been very startled to see how completely different and the height of it, which would never fit in. And I really was confident that if Evanston had rules about step down, the height of buildings and transition units, that they would stick to it. I didn't really anticipate that there would be bargaining allowed. It's not illegal, of course, what the planners are doing, but I think it's a very faulty system that would allow something twice as tall as intended by the planners. My apartment happens, I have a terrific view. I look down on Pastor Grace's, the playground and the side of the church. It's absolutely beautiful. So I would be very sorry to see there'd be all the light and air that would be blocked. Because I think this building would, I think we figured out it would be taller than the park building across the street, which stands out. And it's just because the park building is tall, does not give anybody on this side of the building, the leeway to build an equally tall one. The people have spoken about the alley. I park behind the building, so I depend on getting out of the alley. On the Davis Street end, I'm often blocked by a moving truck, linen delivery, fish delivery. Those are the biggest ones right now. And so I have, if I'm coming in on Davis, then I have to go through the long light at Chicago and then go down a block and wait for the long light to turn right again and come in off of Church Street. And it would be 10 times more complicated with the extra traffic deliveries and cars of a densely populated building there. And I would add that those two intersections on either end of Chicago Avenue there, that block, are extremely long already and hard to get through. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, other hands raised. Mary, again, there are a few people that asked to have their statements read. Are there any more?
I can kind of summarize them. There's Ann Gunther. Hers is a relatively short one. She said there's already a serious problem with car, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic. She's strongly opposed to it. She brought up the issues that other places have done, that it's noisy and it will put additional stresses on the services, and she is opposed to it. Linda Clark also wrote a very long letter, but basically restating what has already been stated by other people. Too much density, too many units. It flaunts the current zoning. They've been rejected already. It's hard to say. Yeah, this one is basically the same as the one before. And then Mr. and Mrs. Feldman wrote one, and they said that, let's see, they're over at 522 Church, and their unit faces the site of the development. We're submitting this comment because we were unable to attend the meeting, which was chosen for a date. Our primary concern, which is one that was shared by staff, is the height and the variances requested by the developer. As the staff proposed 18 stories, noticeably out of scale with the rest of the neighborhood. We've observed that the developer has consistently ignored the consideration of the character of the neighborhood, which the project is proposed to be constructed, and each of several proposals have been submitted. An 18-story building at this location is substantially larger than any other buildings on that side of the street. And the east side of the street is a transition to the residential area. We believe the city should reject the substantial variances of the zoning requirements. And we are concerned that I'll get another one about the state of the alley. But does anyone know how wide the alley will be after something is proposed, constructed there?
the width isn't changing. I believe Tim may have that information. I think it's 18 feet
20,
wide.
20 feet or so, 18 to 20.
Okay, so there's no variances on the alley requested. Okay, and then that was it. Should any of the other proposals by this developer proceed, they should be expected to bring the alley to a state of consistent with the traffic, to a state consistent with the traffic created by the increased density. And Josh Wolf wrote something that if he is opposed to the building, proposed high-rise development, it sounds like it's being pushed through without consideration on surrounding area and the residents and beyond the normal restrictions for the area, and it will make parking and sight lines less appealing. I urge you to vote against it. So that's all that I was forwarded to read. Because the other people have spoken.
I'm Josh Wolf, actually. I just had a question for Mr. Michael. I guess just a simple question I haven't really heard in the proposal or anyone. What has stopped from up to this point? I'm in the Church Hinman area. What has stopped making a proposal for 8 to 10 stories? Is there a specific issue? I mean,
Yeah, it's just the economies of the deal. We've looked at everything, and including 8 to 10 stories, but there are certain sunk costs just in the land, the infrastructure, the foundation, pylons, all that need to be spread. Once you get into those costs, in order to make the deal work, they need to be spread amongst a larger building. It's just a non-starter because of those costs that are involved and the common areas, the infrastructure, MEPs that go into a building, whether it's 8 to 10 stories tall or 15 to 20 stories. It just doesn't make sense. We run those numbers.
For a tall building.
And then you have to factor the affordable units that have to be put in there also. So it's just all of the above.
If there were a developer that were willing to develop that within within the 8-story building and provide the affordable units, would you consider selling? Would that be something? If there were somebody that was willing to accept an ROI of less in order to provide a building that met the zoning and the community.
I don't know how to even answer that hypothetical. Someone present me an offer to buy my land. Sure, everything's for sale. We're intent on developing this property, and we'd like to come to a consensus on that works for the community, that works for everybody involved.
Great. Well, that would be great. I think you've heard from the community. So let's see, are there any other, Paula, your hand was raised?
It was my hand.
Okay, please go ahead.
Well, I guess my question is this will have been the 4th proposal in 2022. And I don't see anything really changing relatively. There's obviously a concern with return on investment because it's expensive land, and the developer will start making a profit as the building gets taller. So since none of us want a taller building, how long are we going to consider proposals that really change very little from proposal to proposal over the years?
I share your concern, and again, for the record,
thank you. I'm not finished.
The only proposal that we've had in 20.
Almost finished.
Well, it's a long question. If I can answer part A, then she can do part B.
Go ahead, finish. I'd like to let the rest.
And this is inappropriate. You should not, Mr. Michael, have the right to overrule people. That's inappropriate.
Thank you. I would like to finish speaking. Thank you. May I?
Absolutely.
I guess the question is, how much is enough? How many times do we have to go through this? Residents spend weeks, hundreds of hours proposing alternatives. We're not developers, obviously. These people are intent on producing a hyper tall building in an area in which it is not appropriate. How many times is the city going to accept proposals from this group? Is there a limit? Because the proposals have varied very little from proposal to proposal. In fact, they've gotten higher once they got their once they got their affordable housing approval. So every time they get something like that, they find a way to subvert part of the code. When is enough enough? Does the city have any means of saying this is not going to work from you people? We've been through this 4 times. This is the end. Now I'm finished.
Thank you.
Are you looking for an answer? I don't know.
No, I'm not.
I didn't think so. I didn't think so.
Oh, because the answers we've gotten over the last 4 years, we've seen, and so we know what they're like. Thank
No,
you.
I understand. I understand your frustrations to be back here again, the time involved, and I am greatly, incredibly appreciative of all the hard work many of you have done, especially you both, to research this and study and all the details. I mean, I understand this is our community, particularly your neighborhood. So I deeply understand your frustrations, and I'm sorry that we're back here again. I agree. I mean, I think we have.
I understand. I'm asking you, is there any mechanism for us to put our foot?
I'm going to talk with, I feel badly, for Mr. Michael too, that this has come this far. I mean, I think we need to revisit how we accept and process developments that so exceed our zoning, where there's clear, when I came to this, and everybody will know this project started before I was elected, but staff has been very supportive of me. I've said, I don't want any development coming forward. I don't even want schematics made until developers sit down with the community to understand the community's interest. So I don't want to see any developments going forward. Again, since I've been elected, I've been doing that, ensuring that the process doesn't get traction the way this has without full community input, so that the developer goes forward in sync with the community, understanding the community's needs. So that's what I hope to see happen over these next years, that we start to move in that direction, so that when we see developments moving forward, it's in conjunction with community conversations and full understanding of the interests, and not, a community having to work so hard. And I'm sorry for the many, many hours that many of you have put in to challenge this. And so that's my hopes, to change this process so that you all in the community does not put in the hundreds of hours. I've been there, as I know some of you on this call know, and in fact, that's in large part what led me to run. I've been there, I've done that, and it's very frustrating. So.
Councilmember Kelly, we really appreciate both of you pulling this group together. We appreciate the opportunity to share our thoughts. We appreciate your work. And maybe a good way to wrap is just to remind everybody about the LUC meeting date and timing, because as frustrated as people are and as tired as they are, I think it's really important that they participate in that session.
Thank you. So the date for that is Megan, are you still on? Megan or Elizabeth?
Yes, that is August 10th. That is a Wednesday. It is in person at 7 p.m. in council chambers.
So I ask you all to please come to that. That's very important that you're heard there. So on that note, any other information that we need before we say goodbye? And again, thank you all for attending, for participating. This is really, this is what makes Evanston ours, and how we want it to be is by, everybody participating, and me as your representative doing my very best to ensure that what happens in this town reflects your interests.
Thank you. Your very best has been very good tonight.
Thank you very much.
Alderman,
yes.
My name is Valerie Kretschmer. I had my hand up for a while here. That's okay. I live in Sherman Plaza, and I'm a planning and real estate consultant. And one of my specialties for 30 plus years is affordable housing. And I just wanted to make it clear, there's been some misinformation that people are saying about affordable housing. The income limits and the maximum allowable rent limits are not just based on the city of Evanston and how rents are going up in the city of Evanston. They are based on the Chicago metropolitan area. These are set every year by HUD. And so it is a problem that rents are going up here, but to say that just because there are more expensive units going up in downtown Evanston is a factor is really irrelevant, because
Building height is.
I mean, in terms of whether what is happening with the need for affordable housing. We know there's a need for affordable housing. The other thing I would like to say, I believe that the D4 should be honored, but there are going to be questions whether it's an 8-story building, a 10-story building, or a 15-story building about traffic. Everybody has questions about traffic, parking, alleys, etc. And what is needed is somebody to hire a transportation consultant, a traffic consultant that's going to look at all of these issues and tell us how much parking truly is needed, what kind of alley situation is needed, the bike safety issues, the pedestrian safety issues, so that once and for all, people know an expert has done that, and there's not all of this conjecture potentially on one side or the other about what the issues are. So I think I would say that maybe I don't know what that's for the developer to do or the city to do, but I think that's something that should be considered. And when it comes to the question of affordable housing, the city is basically nipping away with 10 units here and 10 units there, just like it did with the Cook County Housing Authority proposal. And we're not making significant inroads into the number of units that are really needed in the city. And if somebody is really serious about this, what they need to do is come to the city, buy this site from Mr. Michaels and say, okay, we're going to go and put up an 8-story affordable housing building in here using funds from low-income housing tax credits and other kinds of city funding. And the city, if the city is really intent on this, then they need to come up with the money to assist this, in addition to Cook County tax breaks for affordable housing. And maybe that's something that the city has to really take seriously.
Right. And I just want to agree with you that we do have an issue right now. We don't do any testing for sites. Because some of the people that I meet with most often are some of our residents who have, for example, Section 8 vouchers, and they cannot get into units downtown. So I just want to say there is an issue with accepting very few. We have the Housing Authority of Cook County buildings that are, entirely affordable, but it's very difficult. And I think we all know here, we all have friends, middle income and low income, and even over middle income, that are forced out of here. So it's not just about, Valerie, we don't want to create another Greenwich, Connecticut, where it's a hedge fund city with pockets of low income housing. I think we have to be really clear on that unintended consequence when we continue to create luxury high rises, but we get a smattering of affordable units. By the way, a very few units. I agree with you. I would like to see the city taking more site control and having mixed income where it is affordable units forever in perpetuity. Right now, what we do is we have a high rise go up and put in, let me finish, and put in 5, maybe 10% affordable units that sunset. And gradually our city has become more and more unaffordable and more elite. And I think and I agree with you, Valerie, I think we're on the same page, but I think what we want to do is look at how we don't just do a few token units here and there while we watch Evanston become more and more affordable. I've seen family members put their houses up for sale because they can't live here. I've seen plenty of people. And again, we don't currently even have we don't really have a means in Evanston. We're even testing, meaning finding out when people come with Section 8 vouchers, if they're being accepted or not, or turned away, or if, and we do know that many of these places like the Link, this is student housing. I mean, it's unabashed student housing. I mean, they won't even argue that. That's what many of these high rises are. And this isn't, this isn't creating more. Overall, it's not adding to affordability. These have made Evanston less affordable. Overall, we have not seen an increase in affordability over the years through our inclusionary housing ordinance, which again, I will reiterate, is a very weak inclusionary housing ordinance. So on that note, please, everybody, if you can, please come to the land use meeting, the Land Use Commission on August 10th at 7 p.m. And thank you, Mr. Michael, for presenting this evening. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Good night.